Yo! Bring that right down. Yo, GM. What is good, everybody? Running the first simul-stream across Twitch, YouTube, and X. For people that are repeat joiners, you know that I've been running these on Twitch for the last little while. Making a return to YouTube as well after running a poll in the Daily Edge Telegram channel where I write down my thoughts as a journal. And there was overwhelming request to make a return to YouTube. And I figured, well, you know what? Might as well post these on X as well. Meet people where they are so that we can help relay the system and teach the system that I use to more and more people so that we can meet people where they are. I'm just going to take a quick look through the chat, and just so everyone knows, I can see the comments across all platforms in one place, so I can see who's chatting from where. Looks like we've got a pretty decent turnout, and I think doing the stream to X is helpful for that. So I'm just going to take a look through the chat. I see JJ says GM JJ, good to see you, buddy. Thank you for being here. Always shows up. Really appreciate that. We got Mine H1. I'm sorry if I butchered that, but he says Rapture. What's up, buddy? Thank you for being here. Moses says GM all. We got Quotus, GM, buddy. Good to see you again. Rat Division, good to see you too again. Rangatang, GM. Monsieur Fromage, GM. And B. What up, B? GM to you as well. Thank you for being here. Let me get the formalities out of the way as I do at the beginning of every stream. I am 0xRapture, and this is Astrology for Men. Coffee, charts, and a cigarette. I want to give a shout out to the sponsors of the show. The Daily Edge, thedailyedge.com/subscribe, which is a daily newsletter written by the one and only on-chain wizard, giving you actionable intel, insights, and information about the market from the day before. That is a free newsletter. I would highly recommend you go and subscribe. And we're also brought to you by ChainEDGE, ChainEDGE.io, which is an on-chain analytics platform tracking the top 0.01% of DEX traders by profitability, where you can monitor the real-time flows, holdings, and where the attention in the market is. And don't forget, you can find links in the About section or in the description below. I have to remember to say all these other parts now that we're streaming across platforms so that you know if you're on YouTube where you can find that information, if you're on Twitch where you can find that information, and if you're joining us from X, you can find most of that information from my X profile, Night the Rapture. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the show. Okay, we got that out of the way. How's everybody doing today? Okay, with that. How are we all feeling today? How's the market looking? Pull up my screen. You can all see what I'm looking at. And we'll get this underway. There we go. And let me know if the volume is okay, if the mic is loud enough, if you can all hear me, if the music is too loud or if the music is at a good level. Let me know. So what are we working with? Well, here we've got the Bitcoin chart on weekly. Still working through that weekly broken market structure. We have our weekly swing high, potential weekly swing low here, but we are also looks as though we've put in a slight, or we did put in an SFP on weekly here. Now that's not the weekly low because we didn't put a close in down there, but if this sets like this, if the weekly closes up here, we've got our weekly range formed. Just a reminder that high time frame from weekly, 3-day, and daily on Bitcoin is in bearish market structure, which we set when we broke down from this range that we've been holding since December of last year. Let's take a look and see where we're at right now though. You can see 3-day is bearish structure. I think we can probably get rid of this fair value gap that we outlined a few weeks ago, now that it's not really as important to what we're looking at. We'll get that out of the way. You can see we've got our 3-day swing high, 3-day swing low, bearish structure. It came down and put in a sweep SFP of the 3-day last week, which there were some trades to take off of that, which if you're following along in the Telegram channel, I've outlined setups and trades that were available when we put in that sweep. You can also see daily is bearish. Now, something that I marked out when chatting with some friends the other day was when we were putting in this price action here, it was starting to remind me an awful lot of what was taking place here. I don't know if you remember, but back in February, we were trading within a compressed daily range, and it had been putting in SFPs at that swing level right there. Well, we're doing something similar here, right? We put in 1, 2 SFPs, and now we're getting some follow through to the downside. And people have been following along. I've shown some setups and trades that have been available. Like when this H4 did an SFP, we went long, and then we went short up here. When the daily put in that first SFP right there, we were short, and we've been short again since last night after the daily close. And we've had some follow through to the downside. Now H4 is still in bullish market structure, so there is a chance that on the H4 time frame, Bitcoin is attempting to put in a higher low in this region, in this area of demand. But from here, from up here, I've been short. Was short from here the other day as well. A couple of trades that were available to be taken. There's also a long setup that took place a couple days ago that I pointed out to people that have been following along. I said, well, there is a long opportunity here when it put in an SFP here, which it actually did. It ran up into that daily level that we've been monitoring, but has since sold off. So where are we at now? And I actually had a squiggle drawn out on this chart on the 4-hour outlining what I thought might happen, and it's actually what took place. I was highlighting, like, if you get an SFP down here, well, then there's a thesis to go long, and it actually played out almost identical to the squiggle. I've deleted that squiggle since it's no longer in play. But those are the types of things that you're looking for triggers to get into a trade in either direction, right? Like sweeps and SFPs are very clean signal, especially on higher time frame, for you to look for your setups to enter a trade, either to go long or to go short, right? Because we work on fractals. We do our high time frame analysis, and in this case, we're in bearish weekly structure, bearish 3-day structure, but there's a really great saying and a mindset to frame yourself around, is that you want to be looking for reasons to get bullish at the range lows and bearish at the range highs. Well, that's applied to the setups that we've had. At the moment though, Bitcoin does seem to be trying to put in some sort of local 4-hour bottom around here. There isn't really a trade for me here right now, and I do actually think probability wise, it's for continued downside, but we are monitoring this level. Like if I'm looking at this right now, if you're saying, okay, my bias and my thesis is that price is going to trade lower, but I'm not on board this trade right now, like where would I be looking to get on board to try and short? Well, you're looking for a bounce up into here. You know, if price trades back up into here and you get some sort of price action that looks similar but inverse to a sweep up here, to those sweeps where you're looking for some sort of 4-hour price action, possibly even 1 hour, although I don't really love trading off of 1 hour on something like Bitcoin. It just has so much price history and it just becomes a lot of noise. Now, yes, you can take triggers off H1, off the hourly, which you might be looking for in here, but you'd be looking for something for price to maybe come up into here, put in some sort of H4 high with a couple candles, and then maybe you put in something where you get a level. Sorry, let me redo that because that wasn't quite what I wanted to try. But maybe you get something where you set an H4 interim swing high, and you get, like, say price comes, it trades up here, and then you get a sweep of that level. Well, that would be your trigger to get on board the next trade, if your thesis is that it trades lower, right? We're just looking for fractals of setups on different time frames. And at the moment, because high time frame is bearish, and we've put in price action that aligns with lower prices, you might be looking to get into some sort of short if price trades up into here. Because you do have this area of supply on H4. So just like we got a sweep here, as I was pointing out at the top of the show, we had an SFP there. That was a trigger to get long. And up here as well, you had that SFP trigger to get short. Well, you're looking for some sort of price action to unfold here that could get you on board of the next leg down on a short. Because as of right now, you're essentially in the middle of this H4 range. And we love that phrase, that saying, you don't diddle in the middle. You don't want to be taking your trade setups middle of the range unless you have a clear trigger, because the probability wise is it could go 50-50, right? You could go either direction. But if we draw the fibs, if we draw a fib on this H4 range, this is your H4 range, swing low to swing high, that put in a higher high above the previous H4. Well, if we fib that, we can see that we're just below the mid-range, but we're close enough to it that you want to be looking for a trigger. Like you don't want to be trying to short when price has already come down this far, unless you get a reliable trigger, which we just don't have yet. Like we can jump down to H1. Now we can see price almost came back up into that bearish supply zone, the bearish supply zone, that bearish OB. It didn't quite tag it, so maybe there isn't even enough strength. On H1, it's just showing pretty weak price action. But until you get some sort of setup to work with, there isn't really anything to go off. Like what you could say is maybe you're just looking at this H1 fair value gap, and you can see prices rejecting off there. What's a fair value gap? We talk about this in every stream. A fair value gap is an area of mass price displacement where you get a candle with no price action trading from the candle before or after within the body of that candle. And you box out that area. Like, I don't know if you guys can see what I did. But you mark out from the bottom of the candle before or the top, depending on if it's bullish or bearish, but from the bottom there to the top there, there's your breaker. Or sorry, there's your fair value gap. That is an H1 bearish fair value gap. And you can see price is struggling to get back above that. I suppose another trigger you could be looking for if you're looking for low time frame scalping, like you want to be going high time frame and getting as close to the high time frame setup as possible because you can capture more of the meat of the move. But say you're a super low time frame trader and you're just looking for short-term scalps or snipes. Like a scalp, I would consider like an intraday trade. That's like a trade you're looking to unfold over the course of, say, like 2 to 6 hours, maybe 4 to 12 hours, depending on what time frame you're operating off of. But for like a low time frame snipe on H1, well, maybe you're looking just on H1 for price to come up in there, give you that SFP as a trigger to go short. So that is a potential trade to look at. But I think the more reliable one would be waiting for a higher time frame setup, which would be this H4 supply, and looking for it to give you something like that. But it is looking pretty weak here. We'll have to see. There is, we're in the middle of the week. Well, not middle, the early part of the week, but it is during the week where a lot of news dominates the markets, and there could be news coming out of Washington that might send price towards a setup. I was reading earlier that there was a phone call between Trump and Putin, and maybe there's some information that's going to be released, whether it's positive or negative, out of that call that could send price in either direction. But I'm not a huge fan of news trading in particular. I'm a big fan in just monitoring the chart and trading the chart for your setups. And what news does is it just adds fuel to the setups that were already unfolding. Like, because the chart is bearish, high time frame, any little bit of bad news is going to give it a little bit more fuel to send it in the direction of your trade. But the ideal scenario is to be in those setups before something like that takes place. And why do you want to pick high time frame areas? Well, because on H4 and daily, when you got this SFP up here, your invalidation is super close by. You can get a tight stop where your invalidation is clear and that you have a lot of runway, so that even if there is some good news that comes in, my bias would be that if it pumps it up into here, you're looking for the next short or the continuation of the short. Ultimately, though, given the pattern that's been playing out here, I do think it's high probability that we come down to at least test some of these lows down here again. Like, we have our 3-day low, which is sitting just around 78K, 78 and change. By the way, these are the Binance perps charts. I do most of my analysis on the Binance perps charts because they are some of the most widely monitored charts in crypto. And you want to meet people where they are, where they're trading from. Now, I don't trade on sexes. I like to trade on chain on dexes for perps. Been using Vertex for a lot of my on-chain perps trades. I've also been using Hyperliquid for a lot of my on-chain perps trades. And speaking of Hyperliquid, there was that big event with the Hyperliquid whale that was all over the timeline. I have some thoughts about that. His positioning was actually quite accurate. Like, the short that he took, the short trade that he took, was actually based off of this daily level, which was the similar trade that I was taking. Not because of the Hyperliquid whale, but that's just because that's what the chart told me. And he entered off of good levels and ended up in profit. I have a theory that perhaps there's an element of marketing involved with this, because you have to admit it was all over the timeline. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was, people were banding together to try and stop hunt and liquidate the Hyperliquid whale, which obviously failed and didn't work out in their advantage, but it did bring a lot of attention to Hyperliquid across the timeline. I'm not saying that is what happened, but it's crossed my mind that is a potential theory of what might have been taking place. Either way, though, really great marketing for Hyperliquid, and it's a great platform, and they deserve the attention and focus and usage that they get, because it is a solid platform. Just going to take a look through the chat again. Sparky says GM Sparky. Moses, good times, good day. Awesome to hear. This is pretty good, actually. Doing the simul stream across all these platforms. I don't know that we've had this many viewers like this. This is pretty fun. I'm actually excited for the expansion of using the other platforms to try and help people learn a trading system. Excuse me. Just downing some of my coffee. To help teach the system. Like when I set out to start these streams, Lunar, what's up, buddy? GM, good to see you. Thank you for being here. When I set out to do these streams, when I first started them last summer, I had two goals in mind. My intention was twofold. Goal one was to help people protect their capital from downside risk, to know when a trade is invalidated so that they can minimize losses. And the flip side of that is so that you can be entering a trade with a high probability hit rate for capturing upside and capturing gains. And that remains my goal. Those remain my goals for running these live streams. It's to help pay forward the knowledge that I learned. I mean, I've talked about how I got into trading on numerous occasions, and my journey to get to where I'm at now, that I can relay, where I'm confident enough in my analysis and my trading that I can relay the system to others. But it's built around knowledge that I've learned from very smart and talented traders in the business. You know, guys like Trader Main. Shout out to Trader Main. Massive influence on the way that I trade. Shout out to Big Cheds, another massive influence on the way that I trade and view charts. Crypto Cred, Emperor BTC, and a few other really talented traders. Let's change the music up. We've been listening to this one for a little while. Let's switch it up a little bit. What do we got here? Yeah, there we go. That's a vibe. So looking at Bitcoin, no trade here at the moment. You're waiting for this move to figure out what the next direction is off of that. I still think downside is the higher probability, but we'll have to see. Like say this H4 closes like this, and then you get, you know, we're talking about looking for those SFPs and those sweeps. Well, maybe you get an H4 SFP down here, well, then you have a trigger to go long. Those are two potential if this, then that scenarios that I'm looking at, right? Like trading is all about if this, then that. You don't want to be too pigeonholed into your views, and you don't want to force your view on the market. You want to be adaptable, and you want to be able to look at a chart and say, okay, this is what I believe is going to happen. This is what my thesis is. But if this happens, then I want to do this. Or if that happens, then I want to do that. And so at the moment, given there is no clear setup to take, what I would be looking for is some sort of setup like this to get short, or some sort of setup, the inverse of that, where it comes down, say price comes down, SFPs that, and then you have a setup to get long. But at the moment, there's nothing really to do here. Is that clear for everybody? Does that make sense? Let me know if it does. I'm also going to start doing some of the more structured lesson type live streams where I break down the system into smaller sections so that people can pick it up. But if you go back and watch some of the old streams, and for people that have been following along and watching for a while, you'll know a lot of the system that I use, right? It's based off of a hierarchy. You go high time frame. So your weekly, your 3-day, your daily, you're looking for your high time frame bias. right? Like if we're looking on weekly, our high time frame weekly bias is bearish because it made a lower low, right? When it closed weekly below the range low, the previous range low, we've got bearish weekly structure. So your high time frame bias is bearish. And then what you're doing on lower time frame is looking for triggers to either trade with the trend for continuation, ideally close to the range highs so you can capture as much of the move as possible, or you're looking for counter trend triggers, a counter trend signal, to try and get in to trade the market the opposite direction against the high time frame bias to try and capture the move that creates the lower high in this case, right? Because we're bearish market structure. We're looking for a trade that can take us to capture the lower high, which, you know, maybe it comes back up into here eventually. But at the moment, H4 has been a really useful time frame to trade off of. And yes, it starts to get a bit muddy when you get onto lower time frames and you start having a bunch of lines drawn and stuff like that. But the whole point is that you're basing your setups off of fractals off of the high time frame. So you determine your high time frame bias, and then you jump down into low time frame when price reaches the areas of high time frame that you're looking to do business. And then you're looking for the same things to play out. You're either looking for a trend flip in bias on low time frame. So, you know, when I talk about running counter trend, this move here on H4 is counter trend to the daily bearish trend, or counter trend to the 3-day bearish trend. But that's how you form your lower highs to get in to take the trade either to range lows or to lower lows, right? As you're looking for the counter trend move. So you can trade the market both ways. That is the beauty of markets, especially with perps, is that you can short or long the market. So you can trade the market both ways, because within each candle on high time frame, like even when we're looking at weekly, within this weekly candle here, that long down candle, if we come back in time, well, that was all just short. It was just a bunch of downward candles. But now we're trying to set the counter trend trades and set up so that you can take trades both ways. And when you understand market structure and you're looking at the charts and you're following along and marking out the important levels, it really helps you to know where it is you're looking to do business, so that you don't have to be sitting looking at the chart all day long, right? Especially if you're saying, okay, I want to trade this off H4, I want to scalp, I want to take intraday trades. Well, you set up your levels, you mark out where you want to do business, and then you wait for price to get there, and then you have your plan set out, right? Like this was the plan that we've set up now on H4, is we're saying, okay, if price gives me an SFP of this level here, then I'm looking to get long on that setup. Or if price trades up into here and puts in some price action that gives me some sort of SFP or weakness within the supply zone, I'm looking to take a short from there. All right, but if you're not short from here, which as I mentioned is a trade that I am currently in, you don't want to be down here going, okay, I want to short now, because there's a great adage that if you don't see the meat, you are the meat. And that really stuck with me. I came across that recently on someone's account on X. I can't remember whose, apologies for that. But the quote was, if you don't see the meat, you are the meat. And what does that mean? Well, if you're not seeing this meat of the move, if you're not in this short, and you're looking at the chart going, I think I want to short this now. Well, there's a high chance that that move for the time being is done, and you are going to be the exit liquidity or the counterparty to that trade that gets either liquidated or stopped out. So you want to see the meat. You want to eat that move from as close to the invalidation as possible rather than chasing. Right? So at the moment, given where we are in this leg, this is not where you want to be putting on a short. It's also not where you want to be putting on a long, at least based off of the system that I use here and teach here, because there has been no trigger. Like he could say, okay, I think it's going to bounce up into here, but without some sort of PA that gives you a trigger to align yourself with the thought that that's going to happen, it could just as easily nuke from here. And that becomes tough because if you're looking to short and you don't get your entry, well, that trade is just sort of getting away from you. Now, I know people that are good at breakout trading. That's not the style of trading that I do. It's not how I like to operate. But there are people that do that very successfully, or use moving averages and things like that to get themselves on board to a trending market. I'm much more in favor of allowing a trade setup to unfold so that I can enter in an area that has the highest probability of giving me the type of return that I'm looking for. Okay, so those are our plans. Those are our thoughts on Bitcoin. We can move along to ETH. I haven't really been looking at the ETH chart much recently, but let's take a look and see what it's doing. I've been really locked in on trading Bitcoin, along with a couple buddies of mine. Like, we've been incredibly locked in on the Bitcoin chart, and I just think the Bitcoin chart trades so incredibly clean, meaning that the signals are very reliable. But something that I personally want to improve upon is taking my bias, like yesterday when my bias was short Bitcoin, to take that into higher beta plays. I've just been so locked in trading Bitcoin and having a great time trading Bitcoin that it hasn't been my focus. But that is, that's the ideal way to be using Bitcoin as a barometer for, not a barometer, but as a setup trigger so that you can take longs or shorts on other tokens. Like, say Bitcoin gives you a long setup, you get a reason to get bullish to long it, and you have a short watch list of tokens that have been holding up or performing better than Bitcoin and looking more bullish. Well, then in those moments you want to get long those tokens. And inverse of that, if your setup is telling you, okay, this is an area to short Bitcoin, you want to be looking for the tokens that have been weaker, and then you want to be slamming those short. So we're taking a look at ETH right now. I mean, similar story. ETH is weekly bearish, and you can see how it's been rejecting cleanly off of that weekly range low that we've lost. All right, it came up showing pretty strong weakness. Here's our 3-day range. I can put in the range low here. Excuse me. This is our 3-day bearish range. Swing high that created the swing low, creating a lower low, making bearish market structure on the 3-day. You can pop down to daily. It's also bearish on daily, but you can see how much weaker it's been compared to Bitcoin, right? Like, Bitcoin on daily has managed to put in a bit more of a bounce, although it's weaker than ETH right now at the moment. You can see by the daily, the percent that it's down right now, but we can see that ETH overall has been weaker. Whereas we outlined on the Bitcoin chart where that SFP took place, we can see here on ETH, it didn't even manage to SFP, right? This is what I'm talking about how Bitcoin is such a clean chart to trade that you want to be trying to catch your triggers. Sorry, there's someone spamming some bullshit. In Twitch, don't click on whatever link this person is putting. There's a way to delete it. I'm just trying to remember what it is. How do I delete this? I know there's a way. Oh, here we go. Oh, the account's already been suspended or deactivated. Well, that's funny. Twitch already got to it. So we can see here, I was talking about that SFP that took place on Bitcoin. ETH didn't even manage to do that. This is why I say you look for your triggers off of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin gave you that trigger. Well, then ETH, even though it didn't give you that proper trigger, was a quality short to take place, right? But when we drill down to H4 on ETH, This is why multi-time frame analysis is useful and important. You can see that H4, it gave you the SFPs that Bitcoin gave you, right? But we're in a similar area here where it's kind of like in between a trade. So there's not really anything to do on ETH at the moment, even though, like, look here, maybe we're putting in an SFP there. I'm not really going to rely on that right now as a reason to get long when Bitcoin isn't really giving me that PA. Yes, you have to trade the chart in front of you. And I'm a big believer in that like you trade the chart in isolation. You look at the chart in front of you because that's what other people trading that market are doing. They're looking at that chart. So you do, if you're looking to get long on something, there is a setup that is unfolded here on ETH where you've got an SFP of this H4 level that you could set up a long with your stop just below this wick and look to long it up into probably here, right? Like say Bitcoin gives you that move that I was talking about, right? If Bitcoin gives you this move up into here, well, then you can almost guarantee ETH is going to follow to some degree, and it's already giving you this SFP. So if you were looking to get in early, but it is showing weakness, so you put your stop down here. That's where your trade would be invalidated, and targeting a long up into here. I just don't love taking that trade right now, given what Bitcoin's doing. But if you are just going to trade the chart, there's your long setup. Right, and you're pretty close to invalidation. So even if you do get stopped out, you're going to get stopped out for such a tiny amount. Like even say you have your stop, like just below that wick down here, you're not going to lose much on that trade. But you need to be aware of what's taking place elsewhere in the market. You can take a look at Solana now. Let's open up the Solana chart. Go high time frame. I mean, just overall weakness compared to Bitcoin. Here we can outline our 3-day range now that we've set the swing low on 3-day. I don't like to outline my swing lows until you actually get that 3 candle pattern. For a swing low, you get a high, a low, a high. Well, that's what we've now set here. There's your swing high. We can also see though, on monthly, this is a key level on monthly for Solana. And now that price is below it, it's rejecting off that level. It's not really a great sign. And you can see on daily. So Solana on daily managed to push up into supply, right? Like it generally trades with larger percent moves compared to Bitcoin to both directions. And we can see that Solana actually managed to push up into the daily supply, whereas on Bitcoin, daily supply, it's a little bit muddy, but the real supply zone is all the way up here on daily for Bitcoin, right? Like up here. And you can see that it didn't quite get there. What it did manage to get to, though, actually is this daily fair value gap. It's a tiny one, but look at how that held, right? Like people ask, do fair value gaps work? And what's the difference between a fair value gap or a breaker or a order block? Well, you can see how it is respected, right? And that's actually really interesting to note exactly where it was putting in those daily SFPs within that bearish fair value gap. So that's kind of interesting. I'm going to leave that there. So that's worth noting. See, sometimes even I don't outline everything as I'm looking through a chart. But what you're doing when you get to those areas of supply and demand is you're looking for triggers to either go long in demand or to go short in supply. Well, we can see here Solana pushed up into daily supply. We pop down to H4. Let me get rid of this. You can see on H4, it put in SFPs of the range high, right around the time that Bitcoin was telling you that it probability-wise wanted to trade lower. So there was your short entry there. And now Solana is into an H4 area where you could be looking for a reason to get long, right? Like say Bitcoin puts in something that you're looking for, that you think, okay, this is a decent area to look to get long. Well, Solana could be setting up PA here, right? If this H4 candle closes like this, it's still a while away, 2.5 hours. So, this could just trade down and close below it, and then you negate that level, which is why we wait for candle closes on the time frame we're trading on. Let's say this closes up like this, and then you could put it in H4 SFP down here. After this is closed on the next candle at SFPs, well, then you have a trigger to get long. Because we're nearing the bottom of the H4 range, like I said, I want to be looking for reasons to get long at range lows, or bullish at the lows and bearish at the highs. Well, if we're just looking, an inverse version of this is what we'd be looking for, right? So maybe it's a sweep of that, maybe it's an actual SFP of the H4 range low. But you're constantly monitoring the market. Especially what I like to do is I have alarms set for every 4-hour or H4 close. I have it just set up on my phone that every time a 4-hour candle closes, I get an alarm. And that's a good opportunity for me to check through some charts and see what's been taking place, so that I don't have to be monitoring minute by minute, because I do really like trading on the H4 time frame. So after that candle closes, if you put in something like this and then you get some sort of sweep trigger, there's your trigger to go long, right? It's too early to say. Or maybe it does move up from here and you didn't get an opportunity to get long there, but it comes up, puts in an SFP of this H4 swing level here, perhaps even tagging that monthly level. Well, there's a solid short in my view. We can drill down to H1. I mean, on H1, you do have it. It's come up and tagged H1 supply, right? Like you could have just said, okay, if you're someone that's taking really short-term scalps, really short-term snipe type trades, well, you could have said to yourself, okay, I've made an H1 lower low. There's my supply. You just enter off a tag of that. I don't really love the entries just off the tags at the top or bottom of supply and demand zones. I like looking for an actual trigger, but that is very valid. The problem with that setup though is, like, say you enter off the bottom there, your stop has to go all the way up here. And that's a lot, it's a lot of distance if you're taking something like a scalp. It's a very valid way of trading, especially if you understand the probabilities and know where you're looking to go long or short. It's a valid way of trading, and Trader Main utilizes that as setups quite often. He'll use the H12 for his high time frame bias, and then he'll use H1 for his entries. I'm much more a fan of getting some sort of SFP as an entry, because you can get a much tighter entry and invalidation. But that's what I see on Solana at the moment, right? Like, want some sort of trigger, either to look to get long down here. I would like it to actually take this level out though. Take out some of these lows down here, do an SFP down here of this level. Would be a really great signal to get long. But you have to be looking for these inter-range plays too, right? And I just don't really see any others at the moment. Just looking in the chat, Sparky asked, for ETH, why did you pick the 1880 low and not the 1860 low? Let's take a look at ETH. 1880 low, and this one here, you mean? Because it's put in an SFP. Like, unless it's at the very extremity of the range, you have to be looking inter-range for setups, depending on what your time frame is. Like, if you're looking to swing trade, this is not a reliable signal. This is just for a scalp setup to potentially get long up into somewhere in here. It's not like a huge gains, which is why it's much better to do your business towards the extremities of the high time frame ranges, because then you have a larger move to capture for that stair stepping, either bullish stair stepping to the upside. to go counter trend since we're in bearish ranges, or bearish stair stepping, meaning that you're putting in those fractals, you know, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, right? You're just trying to catch the fractals. But in a short-term scalp situation like this, you're just looking for where, because what is a wick like that telling you? What are wicks like that telling you is that price came down there and buyers stepped in. So if you get down to a level and it puts in an SFP of an inter-range level, well, it's telling you that there are buyers willing to step in there, and that you can set your stop really close by, right? This is for scalp or snipe trading, where you're trying to set your stop super close by so that your invalidation is tight, and you just try to play it to capture that move there. Like, these are very short-term trades, which is why I more prefer to do business at the upper end of the range, right? Like, this was on ETH here. Okay, so we had an H4 fair value gap where price came in, put it in SFP, you had a decent short, put in an SFP, decent short. Now, I think given that we've done this a few times and obvious rejection out of the zone, that it's likely to trade back down to the H4 range low or the daily range low or the 3-day, depending on how deep this wants to go. But given that we can trade the market both ways and you can throw leverage on there, provided that you're using, you know, leverage in an appropriate way where you're not trying to 100x long and your invalidation is like a couple cents away from your entry. Well, if you set yourself up properly on like 5 or 10x to capture a move like that, where your downside is minimized, then that's a setup. Hopefully that makes sense, Sparky. Let's take a look at SPX really quick. So SPX is actually flipped daily back to bullish when it closed above this range high, right? Like, this was your daily bearish range, the most recent one. Well, you got a close above, which flipped daily back to bullish, but it came up and tagged the supply. And I actually had this H4 fair value gap, this actually just actual gap, you know, like things like equities, they're closed, they're not 24/7 markets, so you'll often get gaps. Well, it came up into this H4 fair value gap, and that's exactly where it rejected off of. We can also see there's this bullish H4 fair value gap here that I think maybe price comes down towards over the next day or so before finding the higher low to try and trade back up higher. Right, like, this is something that I'd like to see play out on daily, and we've put in that first leg, right? Like this move, we've put in that move. So now I'm looking for it to come down somewhere into here to push higher up into supply and potentially up into this weekly level, right? Like, we're looking for a weekly swing low to set and ideally give us a run up into weekly supply, which is either up into here or up into here. And in that time, in that move, that gives crypto a good opportunity to get long and to capture upside. Let's take a quick scan through some of the alts that have been showing some signs of, okay, so Fartcoin had been showing signs of bullishness the last couple days. Ooh, but now look at what's happened. So, I mean, Fartcoin is very much bearish structure, right? Like, there's no way around it. Weekly is bearish. 3-day is bearish. We had a perfect 3-day SFP here with an opportunity to get long up into supply, which is now played out, right? Also the daily, put an SFP there. And that's a good move. Like, Fartcoin is a great token, a great asset to trade as a high beta against what your views are for the market. So if you think Bitcoin is going to be a long or Solana is a long, well, then you look to something like Fartcoin to capture a beta amount of upside on that trade. And well, now it's been putting in bearish market structure, right? Or into the supply. And you've since had an H4 lower low. In fact, I think, yeah, let me delete this out of here and I can show you a setup that unfolded that was pretty reliable, especially when Bitcoin was starting to put in signs that it wanted to trade lower. So you had this level here. This was your H4 swing low. Why was that your H4 swing low? Because it was the low that set the H4 range high, right? Swing low to swing high. Now, why you want to capture things as close to the high time frame level as possible is because if you're up here saying, I want to long this, well, you're longing right up into daily bearish range highs, right up into the top area of 3-day bearish supply. Well, you had your H4 swing low, swing high. You got an H4 lower low. Right? There's your market structure break on H4, meaning the lower time frames are starting to realign with the higher time frame back into bearish. Here's your supply. There was your short, right? And right in this moment, you're looking at the Bitcoin chart, right? Like right here is right here. And you're saying, okay, I think Bitcoin's a short. Bitcoin's a short. Well, then just open up your Farcoin chart and drop a short on it, right? And look at how that played out. You need to have a holistic approach to the market and looking at different aspects of it. Like, it's really shitty to be in this position where macro means so much to the markets. Like, we just want to fucking trade crypto, right? But we're at a stage in the market where the macro plays a factor, and Bitcoin, you can bucket into that macro list now, given that it is so closely correlated to equity markets and to TradFi. Well, Bitcoin gave you that setup saying it's short. Well, then you just look to something like Farcoin. It was in supply on H4. You had your setup, right? This was a fractal of the high time frame. H4, lower low. Well, up into supply. There's your short. And what can we do now? What else can we see here? We've since had another H4 lower low. So if Farcoin gives you something up into this fair value gap, like say Bitcoin gives you that move up that we've been talking about where we're looking to enter a next short. Well, if Farcoin moves up into here on that move from Bitcoin, this is where you're looking to short. And you'd be looking for something very similar. Now, we can see here on H4, you didn't get a trigger when it was up in there. Even H1 didn't give you a trigger. So because of the volatility on something like Farcoin, you're not going to get those clean signals that you get on a chart like Bitcoin. They do happen. They do happen. It's not that they never happen. Like, right? Like here, you had a bunch of H1 sweeps, right? Like, you're looking at that saying, okay, H1 couldn't even close above there. Sweep, 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 sweep. I think this is going to be a short, right? But it's not as reliable as something like Bitcoin, which is why I really enjoy trading Bitcoin. Now, look, what do we have here, though? H1 range high. So there you go. They do play out. These SFPs, these swing fail patterns, these sweeps on lower time frame do occur on a chart like Farcoin. And this was your H1 range high, right? It's a bearish H1 range. Here's your range low. Why is this the range? Well, this was your swing high that created your swing low, creating a lower low below the previous H1 range low. There's your bearish H1. Well, price traded back to the top of the range, put it in SFP, enter your short there, stop just above there, and there's your trade, right? You just got to take these fractals and apply them to the chart that you're trading, right? Like, you take your high time frame fractal. What's your market structure? Okay, well, can I see that unfolding on lower time frame? Yes. Well, then there's your more tighter scalp entry. There's your snipe entry. And you'll find the more that you sit with charts, like this takes hours. It's not just something, that you're going to pick up immediately overnight and you're going to question certain levels and you're going to question yourself until you've spent enough time sitting with charts to get a feel, to get that intuition off what you're looking for. I've said this before, it's a very simple system, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It's a simple system in that it's based around very specific things that are simple to comprehend and realize, but it's not as easy to put into practice. And that's where the hours and hours come into play. You know, I spent the tail end of 2021 all through 2022 and into early 2023 really studying my butt off. I would watch, you know, sometimes 4 to 6 hours a day of videos and reading articles and blogs and studying how to read a chart. And I've taken all that and I've distilled it into the system that I use. Like, yes, it's based a lot around the system that Trader Main uses. It's maybe about 75% of the system that he uses, but I take pieces from all of the very talented traders that I learned from and turn it into a system of my own that I use that's reliable and repeatable and that is easy to digest, and so that I can relay that to you guys while I'm also taking these trades. You know, another selfish reason for why I wanted to start doing these streams way back when I did was that it gave me a better comprehension myself of the system. Because what's that that saying that if you can explain something to someone like they're a 5-year-old, like if you can break it down into basic concepts and explain it clearly so that other people can understand it and learn it, it means that you have a deep understanding and comprehension of what it is that you're teaching or that you're doing, right? And that's another interesting thing to think about. Like, if you're getting to a place where you're feeling pretty good about your analysis, try and explain it to someone else. Try and teach it to someone that is earlier on in their journey, trying to learn how to trade, that looks at a chart and just doesn't understand what the fuck is happening. Like back in 2021, I would open a chart, the shit would literally look like voodoo to me. That's why, you know, I use that tagline, voodoo and squiggles for the culture. I would open a chart, it would make zero fucking sense to me. 0 sense. Like, yes, I could understand like some things, but it just looked like a bunch of like squiggly up and downs, like no clear understanding of what was going on. So I took it upon myself to understand, because I noticed that there were people that were just dominating the market, not just based off of buying calls and shills off the timeline, but they actually had a system they were using. And so I took the time to learn it. And really, once you unlock a chart as being a sequence of horizontals, you know, horizontal levels, like I know on the timeline, the last couple of days, there's been a lot of posts of people getting bullish on Fartcoin because of RSI this and oversold that and whatnot. You know, people that have been with me for a little while know that I don't look at those at all. I don't like those indicators. They don't work for me. They work for many people. I'm not saying they can't work, but for me personally, they never made sense to me. And it wasn't until that I started viewing a chart in horizontals that everything really unlocked for me. And big shout out to Big Cheds on that. He was really the first person that unlocked viewing a chart in horizontals rather than diagonals. Also Trader Main, like it's very much based around horizontals. Well, once you start seeing those horizontals and you start seeing those key important levels and you understand market structure and where your range is and why something is your range, it all sort of starts falling into place. Like the market structure aspect, why is something a range high and why is something a range low and why is the bias bullish or bearish? That was one of the last pieces that took a while to understand. But once you get those pieces in place, you get to a point where you can open any chart, even if you had never seen it before, and within, you know, a minute or two, you can understand what's going on and you can outline the areas where you'd like to be doing business. And that just comes from repetition. But my goal is that by doing these streams, and also if you want to jump into the Astrology for Men Telegram group, there's a community group where you can ask questions and stuff like that. But by putting out this these streams is to help people trim down the amount of time it takes to get a grasp of the system, to simplify so that you can get from 0 to 1 a whole lot faster than it took me, because there was a lot of trial and error. You know, I would look at a chart and I'd be like, well, why isn't this demand? Or why isn't this the range? Or why isn't this where, you know? And those sort of things do take time. But if you treat it like, you know, beyond just a hobby, if you treat it as a job and you take it seriously, you can get to that place rather quickly. You know, like the people that I've noticed that have been learning from me over the last, I don't know, whenever I started the live streams last, I want to say August or whenever that was, the people that learned the fastest were the people that were asking questions, that weren't afraid to get it wrong because their intention was to find out how to get it right. So that's a big unlock. Like if you're stuck and you're trying to figure it out and you keep misinterpreting a chart or having no clue as to what's going on, start asking questions. It's a really massive unlock that helps you learn faster because it proves to yourself that you're actually trying to learn and not just guessing, right? Like, yes, what we do with trading can be viewed as gambling, but we're gambling with probabilities on our side, right? Like there's no magic to what we're looking at, and there's no guarantees about what's going to happen. But what the goal is that you're trading in an area where you're putting probability on your side, right? Given that we're in bearish structure here on Fartcoin on 3-day, the probability wise says that when it gets up into supply, there's a higher chance that price gets shorted or traded down than it goes higher. And how do we flip that bias, and how do we, you know, how does the probability change? Well, if you get a 3-day candle close up here above supply where your market structure flips back to bullish, like if you get price action up here, comes up, trades up into here, right? Right, you're looking, you know, if Fartcoin puts in a 3-day higher high, which would signify a high time frame trend shift from bearish back to bullish market structure, well, then you're looking for a reason to get long in demand, but it hasn't done that yet. So the probability wise still says lower. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But yeah, that's what I'd be looking for on Fartcoin. Either an H4 SFP down here to get long, or some PA up in here in this 4-hour fair value gap as a trigger to get short. I'm gonna take a look at, let's take a look at one more coin. Let's look and see if anything has been strong. Like what is the least down token right now? Like everything is really red across the board, right? What has been sort of strong? Okay, well, Maker's green today. We can take a look at that. Cake. So Cake is one that's interesting to me because BSC has been having a mini bull run on chain over there. And the information came across my desk that PancakeSwap had been taking in more daily fees than Jupiter and Uniswap and Radium. So I was like, well, that combined with the fact that Binance Smart Chain has been having a bit of a bull run on chain, and given that Pancake is putting in these bullish metrics, this is a coin I'd be like, it's already done a significant move, and you don't want to be longing the top, right? Like I posted this in the Telegram channel yesterday that if Cake comes down into this daily breaker, I'd be looking to get long on this. And this is definitely a token that is much more bullish than the rest of the market, as we can see, right? But I'm not a top blaster. It's not the way that I trade at all. And we can see that this is looking to form a daily swing high. It hasn't completed it yet. Like realistically, this swing high doesn't form until you get this candle close and another candle close that doesn't breach that wick there. Well, then you get your swing high. Well, then I'm looking to long somewhere in here. And you can see now, okay, well, why don't you top blast? Well, there's signs here, right? Like, oops. There is a sign here to get short, right? SFPs, 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 and Bitcoin has been weak. You want to be cautious though, right? You don't want to be getting too trigger happy trying to short a token that's been strong against the market, right? There's that saying that strength is strength. You want to be looking for strength. Well, rather than looking to short something like this, even though that is a juicy short, if it does play out like that, I'd rather be waiting to look to get long in a token like this, because there's a chance, even if you put your stop up here, that it just does another spike higher, right? Before setting the swing high to come down. But there is, there is a valid short that is there. It's just trying to short strength, especially when tokens on BSC have been hitting 100 mil in the last couple of days. You don't really want to be trying to step in front of that bus too early. But like I said, if this gives me that swing high, I'm looking to get long on BSC somewhere in here, right, for a nice move. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to necessarily trade all the way back up into here, but I'd be looking for a move, up into here somewhere. What was the other one that we just said looked strong? Ooh, Ton's been looking strong. And Maker. I think I'm maybe more interested in Ton than Maker, just given ETH weakness. Okay, well, this is interesting, right? Like, yes, Ton has been strong. But you're right up into daily supply at the extremity of the range. This is your range high. If Ton closes a daily candle above the swing high, above the range high, and gives us bullish market structure on daily, well, then you could look to get long. But when you're up into here, especially it looks as though it's putting in an SFP of that, not really compelling to me now. If Ton, the daily, closes back below the range high, then you got a short setup, right? You've got a pretty good short setup there. But at the moment, yes, it's strong against the market. But if you get that daily signal, say this puts in another SFP there, well then, this could be a good candidate to look to short. Or if it closes above, then you look to get long. Look at H4. SFP on the H4. SFP potentially on the H4, you got 2 hours till that candle closes, but if that closes down here like this, then you have a setup to get short on time. I think we're going to start to wrap it up because I don't know that there's much else. Unless there's any, do you guys have any requests for a chart that you want me to look at? Is there anything in particular that you'd like me to pull up and take a look at? Could be an on-chain token. Here, I'll just open Pui's real quick. I think the Pui's trade might be done. I mean, it's been done, right? Like, it had been holding H4 market structure all the way until it broke lower low here, lower low there, lower low there. Is it trying to find a bottom here? Maybe, but it kind of feels like the meme has been dying out in terms of its attention and focus. Does anyone have any on-chain shitcoin requests before we wrap this up? If not, I do want to thank everyone that's been here, everyone that's joined us. Appreciate all of you for joining the stream. Let me know what you guys think about simul-streaming to X and to YouTube and to Twitch. Let me know where your preferred platform is. Don't forget that if you want to take a look and find the links for the show, that they're in the About section below on Twitch or in the description for the video below on YouTube. Or if you're joining us from X, you can find my various links on my X page. Appreciate anyone that subscribes to the various channels or follows me on X. And make sure you do that on YouTube or on Twitch so that you can always stay up to date with when these streams go live. Do them about 3 times per week. I'm pretty consistent with that, and I'm going to continue to be consistent with that. So if you are trying to get a better grasp of the trading system. You know, I'm not about signals. I'm not really about spoon feeding setups, but I am about teaching the system so that you can find them on your own, right? Like, I'm not going to be the guy posting intraday scalps very often, because by the time that setup is unfolded or is a valid trade, part of that trade is already underway. So my goal is that you'll be able to look at a chart and find them for yourselves. But I'll be here to help point certain things out, especially on higher time frame. Just gonna check in the chat one more time. Monsieur Fromage says, thanks, Rap. Thank you for being here, buddy. Always appreciate seeing you. Always a familiar face. Moses, appreciate the stream. Appreciate you being here too, buddy. Thank you so much. Once again, shout out to the sponsors of the show, The Daily Edge, thedailyedge.com/subscribe, and ChainEDGE, ChainEDGE.io. If you go into the description on YouTube, there is a link for a discount code, 10% off your membership for ChainEDGE. You can also find that in the Astrology for Men AFM Telegram group, which you can find links to access in the description or in the About section here on Twitch. Anything else I need to cover? Oh, and if you're looking for a trading terminal on Solana, consider using my BullX Neo ref link. And if you're looking to trade perps, I've been using Vertex a lot. It's been a great platform. There is a link as well. And on that, I'm going to sign off, and I'll catch up with you all again in a couple days. Ciao.